Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and today we're going to be diving into another Underdog best ball draft. If you're unfamiliar with Underdog or the best ball platform, the rules here are simple. Today we're doing a 12-team half PPR mock draft, 30 seconds per pick, so this should move along fairly quickly and be a fairly efficient process here. But the rules and the structure of best ball is that I don't have to set the lineups for this league. Any week of the season, the computer will put forth the best player or the highest scoring player at every position into my lineup automatically to give me the best shot to win here. There's a small entry fee for today's episode that gives you some of the best ADP that's out there for redraft leagues, or obviously this is a best ball league, but in terms of being a season-long league, Underdog is the top of the market, the top of the game, and in my opinion, they are the best in terms of providing accurate mocks or leagues here and giving you some really realistic representations of how things are going to look come draft season. So, without further ado, we're still waiting on 5 people here, but this should fill up very quickly here, and I will see you guys once we are about ready to get on the clock. Alright, here we go, everybody. So we are in today's draft. We've got our selection with a 1.6 pick to start things off today. This is our third best ball draft we've done of this season here on the channel, so go check out those other 2 videos if you haven't done so already. However, we have a different draft pick in each of those 3 videos, so that'll be at least entertaining for what that's worth. Here we go, kicking the draft off here. We've got the first pick on the board, who I'm looking to take, hopefully with this pick, would be one of those top 3 wide receivers. This is a half PPR league, so that reception value is going to be quite valuable here. And Austin Ekeler's ADP is a bit low. I'd be shocked if he fell to us, but that would be another great value steal there. The first of those receivers goes off the board. We're going to get at least one of those names, that Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, or Austin Ekeler, to get today's video kicked off. So that's a pretty good feeling. We're going to be right in the middle of the action here today all day long. And my goal for today's draft is going to be to not get auto-picked, because we've gotten auto-selected twice per video in those first 2 episodes. Thankfully, they were middle round picks and not the first picks off the board here. But that's a goal of mine to not have occur in today's video. So it does turn out that Austin Ekeler will fall down to us here. Again, this is a half PPR league. You love having one of the most versatile pass catchers in the game, one of the most dynamic playmakers, and he had a load of touchdowns last season as well to help give him some boost in the production category. The one thing to kind of worry about with Austin Ekeler is that size and him getting a little bit banged up due to him not just having the largest stature in the world. They did bring in Isaiah Spiller in the 4th round of this year's draft to possibly be a change of pace player, maybe a 4th quarter, grind out the game, grind out the drive, and dominate time of possession back. We'll see what ends up happening there, but I still love Austin Ekeler as one of the most, valuable fantasy skill sets at the running back position. I have him as my RB3 for this season. And again, he solidifies that role even more when you're talking about those PPR formats. So love everything we're getting here in the first round. We'll see what ends up falling to us in the second here. We've been in the last 2 videos on the kind of the turn of the draft board. We had the 2nd overall pick in last Friday's mock, or these are best ball drafts, not mock drafts, even though I keep calling them that. And then the Thursday of last week, we had the 11th overall pick. So we were right on that turnaround there and had quite a bit of time in between our selections. But today we should just be plugging along through the draft and getting things rolling today. So today, just in terms of talking through what we've got going on, I'm hoping to get out a YouTube short or TikTok episode for you guys. I think I'm going to talk to some Ezekiel Elliott. There's a chance he ends up swinging around on the board for us today. And also, I'm going to be breaking down some redraft wide receiver rankings in a tiers list. So that stuff will all be coming out after this video goes up. But if you're not watching this video right away, head over to the channel. Go check that stuff out. Of course, if you're new around here, drop down and click that subscribe button. We appreciate you guys trying to grow the community this offseason. Also, go check me out on Twitter at Sizzle Fantasy. We're trying to grow that community as well and get involved in the Twitter space. So lots of great stuff going on this summer. And I hope to be doing, these type of best ball drafts 5 days a week here, Monday through Friday. Want to pump out a ton of content for you all. So we'll talk through the draft board here, see exactly what's been going on. We had kind of a running back run after I selected Austin Eckler. 3 of the 4 picks there are actually, nope, that is a mistake. We had Stephon Diggs and Devontae Adams go in that little bubble there. But Henry, Cook all off the board, followed by Najee Harris, Joe Mixon. We're starting to see some more receivers go off the board here as well. We are 4 picks away, so I got to start, paying attention to what I want. Because, again, I don't want to be auto-drafted. I'd be interested in either a running back or receiver here. DeAndre Swift, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, all guys that interest me to an extent. Mark Andrews could be someone to entertain here. Would be right around that similar ADP value to where our actual pick selection is at. Not necessarily that that's something I care about too much here. But I am someone who does like a lot of the later round tight end options in this year's board. I think that the tight end position is growing increasingly deep by the year, and I think that the floor at the position is rising steadily per season as NFL offenses continue to integrate the position into their offensive attack on a weekly basis. There goes Swift off the board. Wouldn't mind drafting an Alvin Kamara, although there is still some risk, and I could get totally burned if those off the field issues result in missed game time or anything like that. But I do have my eyes on those wide receivers as potential options here in the second. What I don't want to do, though, is go down to this A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen type group. At least not with this pick. I'd feel more comfortable with, your Evans, your Kamara, your Andrews at the selection. It looks like I'm going to get one of those names. So not terribly worried about that there. We'll see who ends up falling to us. There's a potential that Mark Andrews, I don't think he'll repeat as the tight end 1 this season. I think that Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts both have very clear paths to potentially, getting in front of him this season, obviously, and there goes Mark Andrews. I think I might end up just going with AK here, and then in the 3rd round coming back for that first receiver. In these mocks so far, or in these best ball drafts, I've really been hitting the running back position early. I do love Mike Evans. He didn't have the most, he had a very quality season last year. It wasn't the most flattering in the world. I will take Alvin Kamara and stack up those pass-catching running backs, 2 of the best in the game at, fielding fantasy points in the passing game. I will pass on Mike Evans. Did have a very good season last year. I do have him as a top 10 wide receiver for this season with Antonio Brown, obviously removing himself from the situation in Tampa Bay. And then Chris Godwin. We don't have a clear path to understand how soon Chris Godwin will be the fullest version of himself again. I think that he is a super valuable player in that Tampa offense. The big slot role, playing a high percentage of the snaps in that offense, and having a high volume of targets come his way from Tom Brady, especially with him returning. That obviously helps all of their situations for this season. But I'm going to be a little bit hesitant here to draft him. I would, prefer to get him in even the later 2nd round or even the top of the 3rd. Didn't have a super high target share, talking about Mike Evans now. It was below 20%. Actually, I believe it was just over 16% last season. He's a guy that you have to worry about catching a lot of touchdown passes, though. But regardless, I do think that you will see, especially in the first half of the season, as Chris Godwin gets his legs back underneath him. And again, who knows if he will play week 1. You've got speculation and all that great stuff. And it sounds like he's making a positive, recovery pace here. But as we've seen with other players in the past, you don't necessarily know that you're going to be ready at the fullest version of yourself week 1, and all that stuff factors into your ability to produce. So even if Chris Godwin's out there, I do think that Evans will see an increased level of work in that Tampa offense for, again, at least the first half of the season. Cam Akers is another guy I look at. He did return down the stretch last season, but it was a different injury as well, Achilles. But in terms of sports injuries, the ACL and the Achilles in football are the ones that I kind of regard as the most significant. He came back, was not the same player, was not nearly as efficient as he was pre-injury. I'll keep talking through this stuff, but we are 2 picks away. So again, don't want to get pigeonholed into making a mistake here. So Keenan Allen is a safe player I'd feel comfortable with as my wide receiver 1. A.J. Brown, a bit of a riskier pick there, goes off the board. James Conner selected. So right now it's between Keenan Allen and Kyle Pitts. And actually, given the fact that we're playing best ball right now and not necessarily doing a pure redraft format league, so I won't be setting the lineup for this team every week, I'm going to go ahead and select Kyle Pitts. I think there's a lot of value in getting a player who has tight end 1 overall upside. You're talking about a player who, at a position, that being tight end, that almost never sees. I believe he's the second player in NFL history to ever have a 1,000-yard receiving season at the tight end position in their rookie year. He caught just 1 touchdown pass. So you're talking about a major discrepancy between his ability to produce yardage in year 1 and then the 1 touchdown pass that he catches. And at the end of the day, I believe that had him finishing as the tight end 6 overall in half PPR scoring. So there's a lot of room for improvement. I would be very, very shocked if he only caught 1 touchdown pass again this year. I think that you can at least boost that number up to 7 or 8. And if he somehow manages to crack double digits and give you a really high-end production point, that's going to be fantastic. Marcus Mariota is not the most ideal player at the quarterback position for that Falcons offense, but he was the quarterback under center for Delanie Walker's prime fantasy seasons in Tennessee, even as he was an aging target and a guy who definitely was not in his athletic prime. So Kyle Pitts, for me, again, as someone who does love those later round tight end options, we're going to shake up the board a little bit here in today's video, go a different route, and use that 3rd round draft pick on a Kyle Pitts. His ADP is 30.5. We got him at the 30th pick. I do feel really good about that. Keenan Allen is the direction I was considering going. Again, as a player who I don't think that Keenan Allen is anyone that we expect to be a week winning player. His ceiling is definitely, not that it's caps, because Justin Herbert is his quarterback. He's a very productive possession receiver, and when given a high volume of targets, can be a fantastic option, again, especially in those full PPR leagues. However, he's not the big play guy. He's not the person that is necessarily this red zone monster that's going to be winning a high percentage of jump balls in the end zone. He's more of the consistency king here. This is the guy that gives you weekly production, weekly volume, weekly value, as opposed to giving you those game-breaking numbers. And in best ball, ultimately, you want some level of consistency. You want a lineup that you can feel confident in on a week-to-week basis to give you a quality output of points. But I feel much better with Kyle Pitts' ceiling at his position, especially with the scarcity of the tight end spot, to just give us better numbers overall over the course of a season. So feeling really, really good about these first 3 picks here. Again, if you're new around here, make sure to drop down, click that subscribe button, give today's video a like. We've got 2 more videos hopefully on the way for this afternoon. So, and I'll be doing best ball drafts every weekday this summer. At least that's the goal right now. I'm sure there'll be a couple of missed days here and there. But while we've got, this awesome tool, this awesome platform with Underdog Fantasy, might as well take advantage of it, do a ton of drafts here, and, have some fun. So here we're at with our 4th round draft selection. I would love to invest into a wide receiver. I might just do so with a Jerry Jeudy, Terry McLaurin, Marquise Brown, all guys that have nice upside. Not going to bother with Darren Waller or George Kittle, and not super interested in the the quarterback position just yet. I think I might do a little bit of a reach here. I'm contemplating between Terry McLaurin and Jerry Jeudy. Chris Godwin is interesting as well. I love the ceiling of both of these players. I'm going to reach up the board here. I'm going to select Jerry Jeudy now. I feel very comfortable. How come it's not letting me select Jerry Jeudy? Here's a glitch. Come on. I don't want to get auto-picked. There we go. All right. Jerry Jeudy there is our 4th round pick. A little bit early, about 5 picks ahead of his ADP. However, between him and Terry McLaurin, there's a fair amount of risk with each. What I'm betting on here by taking Jerry Jeudy ahead of Terry McLaurin is the quarterback play. I'm betting that Russell Wilson will be a more reliable weekly passer than Carson Wentz will. And while I do like Terry McLaurin's fantasy situation for this season, if we take a look at last year, Terry, you just saw him go at the 4-9 there. You're talking about a guy who had 3rd round ADP in 2021 and had worse quarterback play heading into that season. Now, Carson Wentz is no perfect quarterback. This is not a guy who's going to be able to deliver a 10 to 12 point game every single week for his number 1 wide receiver. Terry McLaurin is going to still have stinker games this season. But I think that if you asked any sensible football or fantasy football player, anyone who knows what they're talking about, would you rather have Taylor Heineke or Carson Wentz throwing the football to your fantasy option? I think about 95% would tell you they'd rather have Carson Wentz. You've got the bigger arm, the better talent, more upside, and Terry McLaurin is a fantastic wide receiver. We saw last season just when he's out there and putting up points, you're getting really, really consistent, or not consistent, but really high upside playmaking ability to, win contested catches, be ahead of the game physically. His explosiveness is fantastic. His ability to stretch the field. This pick is really interesting. So we're about into the middle of the 5th round here, and I've got quite the tough choice. Whether I want to go back to the wide receiver room here, there are some names I really like. A-Rob and Juju Smith-Schuster. I think I might wait. I think there will be a quarterback option that I really like coming back on this next selection. I would kill for a Travis Etienne at this pick. A-Rob and Juju, again, are very interesting options to me here. I think I'm going to go and address... Man, I got to do it. I think I'm going to go Juju here. That's a coin flip for me between him and Etienne. The quarterback value in terms of ADP is still there, but I do want to make sure I feel comfortable with those top 2 receiving options. It killed me to let Travis Etienne stay on the board there because I think that he is a steal at his ADP right now. 56.8 for a running back who has that pass-catching skill set. Doug Peterson, throughout his time as a head coach in Philadelphia, gave his lead back over 4 opportunities per game, so that meaning targets in the passing game per game on a per game basis, which is phenomenal. If you're talking about getting Travis Etienne, a first-round caliber running back, a guy who was a top 2 running back in last year's draft class, never saw the field because he had the injury that held him out for the entire season. I believe that was a Liz Frank injury. Obviously a big deal, not what you love to see, but James Robinson has a late season Achilles injury, and you've got a situation now where you don't expect him to get a high volume of touches early on in the year. So if Travis Etienne can just kind of put to bed who is the best running back, the most talented player in that offense, you've got a lot of upside there. So just to give you some insight into, I totally forgot what we were talking about we were talking about the situation between Terry McLaurin and Jerry Jeudy. Didn't really get to break down that pick too much. We'll circle back to that here, but Jalen Hurts is really who I've got my eyes on here for this next draft pick. In terms of the quarterback position, him and Kyler Murray are 2 guys I see very comparable to one another. I think Jalen Hurts could finish as the number 1 overall quarterback this season with having A.J. Brown enter that offense. And if he just maintains a 85% level of that rushing volume from last year and increases his passing output, or at least becomes more efficient and more effective as a passer of the football in terms of scoring fantasy points, the opportunity is there. The upside is there. Really liking how this team is coming together here. There still is a lot of opportunity at the wide receiver position on the board here. And last year, I absolutely hated being in the middle of the draft board. This is the first time I've been at the 1-6 position to start things off here. I'm loving how this draft is going right now. I'm feeling really good about this team. Again, that last decision there, you can disagree with me. We went Juju Smith-Schuster this time. Kind of wishing a little bit I went Travis Etienne. I just love that situation and that upside so much. I think it's really, really intriguing. Oof. So I am the 5th pick on the board here, and Jalen Hurts is the 5th next player up on the board. So we'll see if that wish comes true. The last two videos, every time I kind of forecast who I'm looking to take with the next pick, someone jumps me and drafts him. Now, that did help my case that someone reached down and selected A.J. Dillon. Still, a very good opportunity for points there. If he overtakes Aaron Jones a little bit in the rushing department on top of his utility as a pass catcher. Now, Kyler Murray is still on the board. Joe Burrow is still on the board. I am still going to select Jalen Hurts here. Now, despite the discrepancy in ADP, the reason for going Jalen Hurts here is because Kyler Murray has gotten dinged each of the last 2 seasons down the stretch, and we've seen his fantasy points kind of peril, and that is something I don't want to deal with. When we're talking about championship fantasy football, winning games down the stretch of the season, I need guys who are healthy. I just trust Jalen Hurts' frame a little bit more in terms of being a thicker, bigger body. Kyler Murray is fantastic. Way better at throwing the football downfield. Way better in terms of being an NFL quarterback and having touch passes. Him and Hollywood Brown are going to light it up downfield. When DeAndre Hopkins returns after a 6-week suspension, if he's healthy, he's going to be hopefully putting up top 12 fantasy points on a week-to-week basis. Obviously, it's probably unlikely he's going to finish as a top 12 player this year just because of the fact that you're missing a third of the season, basically, because obviously he had the performance-enhancing drugs issue this season, or whatever that substance was that was outlawed by the NFLPA. So I trust Jalen Hurts' ability to stay healthy. That's really what it comes down for to me, because I don't want a quarterback who, although, again, Kyler Murray, phenomenal passer, he's got the rushing ability, he's scored the touchdowns in the run game, has a loaded receiver core with D-Hop, Hollywood Brown, A.J. Brown, A.J. Green, not A.J. Brown, all the the AJs and the Moores. It's very confusing, easy to get your tongue tied up there. But essentially, again, with Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, for Jalen Hurts now, the run game, or his activeness and involvement in the run game, the positive game scripts I expect them to be having because they're able to put up points early, that being Philadelphia. I just think it's a really good situation I don't want to pass on. So we're 5 picks away here. Not too worried about the running back position at all right now. I could address it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is someone I would actually entertain drafting here. I'm not really too interested in a Dalton Schultz or a TJ Hawkinson. Adam Thielen, someone interesting in terms of being a guy who I think is being faded a little bit too aggressively right now. I actually just had a really interesting Twitter conversation the other day. All the more reason to go check out SFS on Twitter, @SizzleFantasy. We'll see if I find this while I'm editing today's video and put up the little Twitter animation I just, got my hands on the other day. But we were talking about Adam Thielen and how in 2020 he missed a game because of COVID. People faded him, and, he got kind of slapped with this injury prone or lack of availability tag. And then last year he got his ankle beat up despite, getting off to a hot start and catching a handful of touchdown passes again. So are we being too skittish with Adam Thielen? I think it's a really interesting debate to have. And, did he just go? I feel like, oh, nope, he's still on the board there. As my wide receiver 3 on this team, I would be interested. But the question is, do I want Clyde Edwards-Helaire? And I think the answer to that question is going to be yes right here. I will pass up Thielen this time around. Now, I've had discussions. I made a YouTube short the other day about CEH. And I think there's a lot of upside. You're talking about having 57 targets for Darrell Williams vacated in this offense with him not being a member of this football team this season. And another 20 with Jerick McKinnon, who didn't really play all that much last year. He didn't start a single game, but was more so a scat back in someone who was used as a pass catcher for Pat Mahomes down the stretch. And I will say his impact was felt. I thought that he was actually a very valuable piece to that offense when he was out there and on the field. Won a few prop bets, taking the over on his reception totals last season. Really talented player. It looked like he was going to be, it must have been the 2019 season, the lead back for San Francisco before he tore his ACL. I remember he was like a 4th round pick. I think that was 2019, the year of Raheem Mostert. But, he's no longer in town either. So that's what, between those two players, you've got 77 targets. 2 running backs opened up in the receiving game, and that's what CH does best. And he only saw 23 targets, being, the player who was drafted out of LSU to be this versatile weapon out of the backfield that can contribute in the receiving game. He basically didn't do that at all last season. I'm not factoring in goal line production here. I'm not assuming he's going to see more red zone work. He is, you're expecting bare bones numbers in those categories. Ronald Jones, if he took every single goal line touchdown next season, I wouldn't be surprised. But when you're giving me a half PPR league, when you're giving me a player who has that many targets opened up in the passing game, and a guy who should finally be the lead back for this team, you've gotten through the draft. There's not really anyone that scares me too much. Again, short down and distance, Rojo. I'm not going to pretend that he's not going to be involved in this offense. But that pass-catching skill set alone is enough for me to at least be interested in throwing a couple dartboard throws here at a guy whose ADP, pigeonholes him as a running back 3, but I think in PPR formats easily finishes as a top 24 back if he's healthy and available. He only played 10 games last season, but he also, wasn't clean for all of last year in terms of being super healthy. So I'm confident and optimistic. It's all about value. We're going to talk about that with we're going to talk about that with Ezekiel Elliott later today, and that YouTube short that I'm making, where we have to manage our expectations. ADP is all about expectations, and when a guy doesn't meet our expectations, we got to pick here. I'm sorry. I will continue this thought here in just a second, but I am not about to get absolutely burned and miss this pick. So I definitely want to go wide receiver here. Brandon Ayuk is someone I would be interested in. A little bit skeptical about Tyler Lockett there. Christian Kirk is interesting as well. For this pick, I'm going to just go with Ayuk here. You've got a lot of upside in the sense that Debo could hold out. Now, that's not something I'm expecting to happen. I think he'll be out there. I hope that him and San Francisco get a deal done. But what is he? My wide receiver 3. So not ideal. Obviously, there are other players I do like on the board. Chris Olave, someone I thought about. Christian Kirk could, he had a 1,000-yard season last year as the wide receiver. He was the most productive receiver for Arizona last season, but he was, on the depth chart, the wide receiver 2 or 3, whether or not you rate him above or below A.J. Green. In Jacksonville, is Trevor Lawrence's top passing option, though. There's certainly a lot of value to be had there. So that's an interesting situation. I do like Fantasy Decision 1978 just did there. Shout out to you. I do respect the pick there. But Brandon Ayuk, in the event that Deebo Samuel is stubborn and doesn't want to come out and play football for San Francisco, and if he wants a contract, I don't blame him. If I would not go practice for San Francisco, one of the most, if not the most physical football team in the National Football League, especially with how they use Deebo Samuel in that wide back situation. He said that reportedly there were reports that he doesn't want to be a wide back anymore. He wants to be a traditional wide receiver, catching passes out in space and making plays downfield, probably to increase his longevity and maybe get him another contract that he otherwise wouldn't get if he was, he said last year he could be a 1,000 back in terms of rushing and receiving yardage if they started using him in that fashion early last season. So a lot of opportunity, but if Deebo were not to be out there, I think Brandon Ayuk is a fantastic number 2 wide receiver for that offense, and both as a potential fantasy asset, really underrated route runner. He can get out in space and do some of the stuff that Deebo does, although he's not quite as physical. And from a pure passing standpoint, if Trey Lance comes out and hits as a thrower of the football, which we expect him, it's still murky. Jimmy G is still there. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. There's rumors that Trey Lance is underwhelming San Francisco. He hasn't lived up to their expectations, all that good stuff. However, I am 3 picks away, so I don't want to totally get myself into trouble here. I wouldn't mind picking Allen Lazard. I think he has a shot to be very productive in spurts here for Aaron Rodgers. Potentially, if Christian Watson doesn't hit day one, we've seen rookie receivers in Green Bay struggle at times. Obviously, you've got all these reports about Aaron Rodgers and his chemistry with rookie receivers not being great right off the bat. That's fine. I think Christian Watson will do just fine. But I trust Lazard to stay healthy much more than I trust Sammy Watkins to stay healthy. And with Garrett Wilson and Tyler Lockett both being off the board now, and me not necessarily needing a quarterback or tight end 2 at this spot, I think I will go ahead and take Lazard. Him and Aaron do have that chemistry. I do feel confident that he will have some big games this season. He caught a nice amount of touchdowns when he was available last year. I would love to get Jameson Williams here with this next pick. I think his upside is amazing. What were we talking about before that, though? Oh, just Brandon Ayuk in his opportunity in that San Francisco offense. So you've got your question marks with Trey Lance and whatnot. We'll see what that materializes into. I expect he'll be the week 1 starter. I think if you're the 49ers, you just rip the Band-Aid off, figure out if you got things right in last year's draft. It'll suck if you didn't. But while you've got Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster, you might as well figure it out before you move him, right? I mean, they do. Heck, what if you play Trey Lance, and this is me just being a pretend GM here, and who knows, maybe this sounds dumb to those of you listening at home. Let me know in the comment section if you're listening at this point in the video. Is this a good take or not? So you've got Jimmy G under contract. You don't necessarily have the pressure to move him day one. You can keep him, hold on to him until the trade deadline next season, and if not, you determine that Trey Lance is the guy. If he has enough tools that he brings to the table, you're comfortable moving forward with him. Or if you think he's too raw, there's too many issues, you're a season and a half deep into this experiment now. If it's not working, you can choose to move either player at the deadline. Now, the more likely scenario is that you're going to flip Jimmy Garoppolo if Trey Lance is indeed a hit, if he was a good draft choice, 3rd overall in the 2021 draft. You move Jimmy G at the trade deadline, give him to a QB-needy team. Maybe someone got injured, or a contending team, they want to make a run, they flip you a second-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo. Whatever the case is, I think there is a role and a scenario where you do trade Jimmy G in the preseason before week 1 even starts. But I think there's also a very realistic shot that he might just hang out on the roster as a number 2 quarterback during the season. The issue is that once you go to Trey Lance as your full-time starter, though, I think it's really hard to pull him and go back to Jimmy G because that's going to hurt his confidence and stunt his growth a little bit there. So looking at this next pick, Jameson Williams is still there. If he is not there, I'm very interested in a pass-catching role for a guy like a Chase Edmonds here. His ADP is 107. We are flying through today's mock draft or through today's best ball draft. I feel like this is going a bit quicker than the other two have. Maybe it's just because I'm, more settled in here, more comfortable, more confident in my draft picks. Having a great time with you guys. We'll see. Who knows? When I go back and edit this video, we'll find all that great stuff out. Oof. Jameson Williams went off the board there. So that stinks. Really not loving the receiver crop here. I think the pick for me might end up just being Chase Edmonds. And if Chase Edmonds ends up getting picked, I might just go, I need a backup plan in case. Oh, okay, all right. The backup plan is now. It's happening, ladies and gentlemen. We have got to, ring the alarm. Let's figure out what the heck we're going to do here. So I think I might end up just, going for a Trey Lance and going for that upside. I wouldn't mind having a Kirk Cousins because I think his floor is really high. But I think that by drafting a Trey Lance here, again, incredibly risky pick. Definitely not a guaranteed selection here. But I've already got myself invested into Justin Fields in a couple of these best ball drafts. Again, Kirk Cousins, in terms of having a high floor, is someone I don't mind. But we do have those 2 quarterback positions, very high upside players with their legs and rushing ability selected there at those 2 picks. And one thing I got very lucky with today that I've been burned with in the last 2, or at least 1 for sure, videos is the bye weeks. Now, CEH and Austin Eckler both have week 8 buys, so we're going to take a look at that and make sure we address that. The week 9 buys this year are ridiculous with how many teams have this. San Francisco and Denver both have that. In one video, I think it was 2 tight ends. The 2 tight ends I drafted both had week 9 buys. Week 9 has been my kryptonite here in these best ball drafts. I will definitely keep an eye on that. But thankfully, we have 2 quarterbacks with different bye weeks. And had I went Kirk Cousins, would have fallen into the trap yet again. So in terms of best ball, it's not a huge deal in redraft because you can always stream somebody off the waiver wire. But in best ball, you are definitely boned if you do not look at the bye weeks carefully, which is definitely something that as we are going through these videos, we got to do better at. So we got to address that a little bit more. 14 for Kyle Pitts at the tight end position. So no Robert Tonyan, no Cole Kmet, no Logan Thomas, no Taysom Hill. Perfect. All guys I wasn't going to draft anyways. So that's nice to not have to worry about. Irv, Albert O, interesting options there to have as a tight end too. I don't feel the pressure to invest too heavily having a 3rd-round pick in Kyle Pitts here. You're assuming that every week other than his bye and maybe a couple stinker games here and there, you're probably not going to have someone else in the lineup. We are 1 pick away, and I have absolutely no idea who I'm going to take here. I might just go with Jacoby Myers and get myself a high floor wide receiver in that Pats offense. I expect him to lead that team in targets, again, barring some unforeseen change. Rashad White is interesting, but for the time being, I expect that Leonard Fournette, unless injured, is going to be the workhorse for that team. There's a reason his ADP is so high this year. And with Mecole Hardman going there, already having our 2nd quarterback spot addressed, not feeling super confident or bullish on Ronald Jones. Again, this is half PPR. I love CEH this season. I think the move for me here is simply going to be Jacoby Myers. I could address tight end too, but I do want some more depth. This is not a super high upside pick. Again, not necessarily, he's my wide receiver 5, which is actually perfect. Wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 is fair territory for a player of Jacoby Myers' caliber. Not someone that's going to be in the lineup all that much because we're assuming that if other players are hitting, their ceilings are just higher. They're going to get in the lineup, whereas Jacoby is not. And that is just fine by me. But in case I have a week where nobody hits, that'll happen, I'm sure. I'm sure that those 5 names will all manage to stink it up all at the same time together this season, Jacoby can at least maybe give me a respectable outing instead of like 4, which is not something that you're looking for, or 5 or 6 or, anything 8 or less to me is a stinker game, especially in half PPR. But giving ourselves a little bit more security there. And with this next pick, I would ideally like to take Irv Smith. We'll see if he's still there. I love Rob Gronkowski. At his ADP, not so much. Now, if he comes back to football, if he commits to the Buccaneers and plays again this year, you're going to get the touchdowns. You're going to get the chemistry between TB12 and Rob Gronkowski. You're going to get all that great stuff bundled up into a basket for possibly a discounted price. It'd actually be really interesting to see what happens to Gronk's ADP if Tom were to come back, because he's someone who has actually, maybe don't quote me on this, because I should probably go do some background research to make sure what I'm saying is actually factual. But I feel like when he announced his, coming back from retirement, I feel like his ADP was a little bit more discounted than it even is this season, and we really don't know if he's playing football this year. Could be wrong. Maybe it's about the same. Maybe it's lower. But I feel like because of the success he's had, especially in the red zone, he's becoming a bit more of a costly asset, despite the fact that he is still a free agent. It says Tampa Bay, but unless I totally missed some big news, he is still running around barbershops, having fun with fans, partying, and not ready to commit back to the sport. So we'll see what happens there. Interesting situation. Can't take Robert Tonyan. Mike Gesicki's in a crowded offense now. You've got Tyreek Hill coming in and Devontae Parker going out. I think that that's a detriment to Mike Gesicki's volume, although he could still be a very prominent red zone weapon, very good at getting vertical and making contested tough grabs. Very, very fond of just, watching him. But, all right. There goes Irv. There goes Gesicki. It looks like Alberto is going to be the tight end too here, guys. We'll see what ends up happening. Ooh, I might want to throw a dart at Jahan Dotson, though. Just talking about kind of that upside that you get brought to the table okay. So I could still grab Njoku later. We're going in Landry, who's another option. So I do like Jamison Crowder. We got all the J's here today. Jarvis, Jameson, and Jahan. Tongue twisters. I think I'm going to go Jahan here. So I really like his ability to get vertical. I think this adds some upside to this best ball draft here today. Jamison Crowder is really, really interesting to me. Long term, I love Khalil Shakir in terms of a dynasty perspective, but that's obviously not what we're talking about today. But in terms of dynasty, I love Khalil Shakir in terms of being the long-term slot for the Bills. For 2022, though, sign me up for some Jamison Crowder. Now, while everyone is drooling over Gabriel Davis, and while I myself did so after the divisional round game, I made a video talking about him as a trade target in Dynasty, but the community hype has gotten to an extent where his price has been driven into the late 5th round of drafts. I just can't stand for that. I mean, it's a guy who has less than an 11% target share in the Bills offense. You're talking about a Cole Beasley role that was higher volume, more consistency, and you're getting a talented player in Crowder who's produced with 2 franchises with a lackluster quarterback play. You're talking about probably the best quarterback of Jamison Crowder's career being Kirk Cousins in a Washington football team, at the time it was a different name, uniform in that must have been back in his rookie contract now. I think he's on his third contract here. So he's been playing with the Jets and putting up numbers here. He's, I would constantly flex him with Sam Darnold. He's just a safety blanket. He's a safe guy. He can actually make plays with his legs and is more explosive in the open field than I even give him credit for. And with Josh Allen, I can only assume if he stays healthy, he could have one of the better seasons of his career. So keep your eye on Jamison Crowder. I do want to go Jahan Dotson, though, because like I was talking about, you've got 2 vertical weapons with Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin, and you've got a big-armed quarterback in Carson Wentz. He will take shots down the field, and he will give these guys the opportunity to make plays. I've talked about this offseason as well. I got the privilege to watch Jahan Dotson with my own 2 eyes when Penn State took on the Wisconsin Badgers this fall, and holy cow. This dude is a burner, would literally have guys tipping over, falling over, burning them, getting 15 yards of separation downfield, and had his quarterback not been so trash and severely underthrown him time and time again, he probably would have had, I don't even know what the stats said he had for that game, but he probably would have been north of 200 yards, and he probably could have had 3 or 4 touchdowns. That's how open he was getting. It was just a lack of ability to get him the football. So He is a stud. Love what his game represents. Just going to quick peek at the receiver room here. Njoku would be a bit of a reach for me. Will Fuller's interesting because if he signs with someone, I think that could give me some nice upside. I'm going to try and be a little sneaky here, though, and I'm going to take Alec Pierce. All right, we'll see if he actually ends up hitting. Will Fuller, once he signs, I will definitely dive into that situation. I don't really want to take a guy, though, that could potentially not be on a team this year. I think that's very unlikely. I think he'll find a home in a landing spot. At the end of the day, I'm not a huge Corey Davis or Van Jefferson guy. I just think that Allen Robinson is going to be so productive in the number 2 role. How much is really going to be left for number 3, especially when you've got Higbee there as well. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, the new run game with Michael Carter and Breece Hall. How much is going to be left for Corey Davis? Jalen Tolbert, a rookie, he could step up and play very nicely this year. We'll end up seeing, we talked about earlier with Chris Godwin's injury on that Mike Davis situation. Obviously, both Godwin ACL and Gallup ACL. Will they be themselves week 1? That should give Tolbert the opportunity if he is a competent player, because obviously the one question mark is small school production, although he did dominate that league. Will he be able to step up and be an outside receiver productive day 1 in Dallas's offense? The verdict is still out on that. So, perfect world here. We're 7 picks away. David Njoku would be my tight end 2. I'd feel really good about that. He's one of my favorite sleepers in this year's draft in terms of a really late name that you can scoop up for fairly cheap. We have went very light at the running back position in today's video as well. So, I actually might, for the sake of positional scarcity and needing somebody with a different bye week, I might scoop up Kenneth Gainwell, who I expect to have a respectable role in the receiving game here. And Njoku's gone, so we're still 5 picks away, and Njoku's gone. His ADP is going to keep rising as more people talk about him. I just think that with what Deshaun Watson has done for players who are not very talented at the tight end spot, I can only imagine how a former first-round pick who had flashes last year and got the franchise tag showing you how much the Browns value his presence on that football team. I just think he's going to take positive steps forward here and show us finally what he can really be, and kind of going to that tag that we give tight ends of, it takes them multiple years to produce. Not many guys, Kyle Pitts being one of them, who was the exception. Kyle Pitts comes out and has a 1,000-yard rookie season. Most guys aren't doing that, no matter how athletic they are, and David Njoku for the position is quite athletic. So, all things to consider there. Tyron Davis-Price is someone in best ball who I think is really interesting as well. If something were to happen to Eli Mitchell, and if they actually like Tyron Davis-Price this year, as opposed to Trey Sermon, who they drafted last season, there goes Tyron Davis-Price, you could have something here. You could be onto something. Marlon Mack's another name I might keep my eye on here as the position becomes thinner and thinner. I think this pick, though, I'm going to go Kenneth Gainwell. Who really knows how much of this offense he can take over? I think, to me, he is more of a receiving back. Not someone that gets me overly excited, but you've got that difference in bye week there. He's my RB4 on this team. I'm going to queue up Marlon Mack here as someone who I'm interested in with this next pick. We'll see if he lands to me. Based off of what the ADP told me at that point, now people are going to reach. If someone likes Marlon Mack, there's a good chance he's not there anymore. I will also queue up J.D. McKissic for the exact same reason. Just to make sure I address this group. Now, Marlon Mack has a week 6 bye, which would be a lot more advantageous to this team than that week 14 bye with McKissic would be, because then you'd be without Kamara and McKissic in the same week. And obviously, with injuries and unavailability, there's a lot of stuff that can go bad at the running back spot in these best ball leagues. So, kind of the reason that I prioritized going that direction this round as opposed to a different spot. Had David Njoku been on the board, I probably still would have had to pass him up, because I don't want to walk into round, what are we in now, 15, with just 3 RBs on the table. Although I do feel great about having this top 2, even top 3 combo. I think that those 3 should theoretically, if healthy, be the guys in the lineup at the position on a week-to-week basis. But who knows what will ultimately end up happening here. The roster size, just to give you guys an idea of what's going on, is you got to start 2 running backs every week, 3 wide receivers, a flex, a tight end, and a quarterback. So fairly standard stuff. Traditional redraft leagues will be 2 and 2. for running backs and receivers, where you've got 3 receivers, so makes depth there a little bit more important. And if you only need to start 2 running backs on a given week, so it's not like you have to go super top heavy there, or spread out in terms of your depth. Raheem Mostert's not someone I love in terms of just being super injury prone and that being a very, very crowded backfield. Sony Michel, Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, Myles Gaskin's still there as well. Khalil Herbert's one of the top handcuffs this year, if you ask me. I think he's shown last season dominating a tough defensive front like Tampa Bay. If he's filling in for David Montgomery, he can be effective. I think I'm just going to reach down the board here, not like super high on any of these guys in between here. I'm going to reach down and snag up Marlon Mack. I think it's just important. And then, honestly, I can probably put a wrap on the running back position for today's episode. Really would like to get one more tight end, just so that Week 14 we're not riding completely without, and we do have a lot of Week 14 buys in this roster with Lazard, Dotson, Pierce, and Pitts. But we're going to make sure we address that position at least one more time. Would love to find some more upside at wide receiver, especially seeing these 3 Week 14 buys here. You're going to have to start somebody else in those weeks, and if someone flops, you don't want to be caught in a pickle. So at least balancing things out a little bit if we do have some bye week trouble on this team. Alec Pierce is someone, though, we drafted. Didn't really get to talk about all that much at all. So Alec Pierce, the reasoning behind this is I think that Matt Ryan stabilizes this offense a lot more. And Michael Pittman, to me, is a really nice boundary receiver, but I almost wonder, I think Alec Pierce could definitely line up on the other side of him, but I've also seen, the opportunity for him to be a big slot player. You never know who could pop out and be your discount Cooper Kupp. Now, I don't think that he is that level of a player, but he is a guy, a big frame here. He's 6'3". He can get out there in space. I think he has really good boundary route skills. His back shoulder fades and vertical pressing routes are fantastic. But if they can develop that underneath tree a little bit, I think that Matt Ryan, as a game manager and a pocket passer, would be very effective at getting him the football, and he could potentially see a higher volume of targets than a lot of people are giving him credit for. Now, I am starting to see a resurgence of the Paris Campbell hype train, which is not something that I'm super fond of, but he is very athletic and was a walking highlight reel at Ohio State. So we'll see what happens there. Round 16, so I've got 3 picks left on today's board. Hayden Hurst. This is another interesting tight end that, while we're here, I would love to talk about. So CJ Uzomah departed from Cincinnati in free agency, and Joe Burrow has shown interest, to my eye, in throwing the football to the tight end position. Now, you've got 3 wide receivers who are clearly the top targets in this offense, but Uzomah made big plays in big moments last season, and of course, there goes Hayden Hurst. Every time I queue up a tight end, they are dropping like flies off the board here. So let's just address who I'm going to actually take with this next pick before I actually do so. Marvin Jones is still interesting this season, despite the fact that, he's like 33, maybe going on 34 this season. But, could still be a number 2 wide receiver in this offense. We'll see if Laviska Shenault ever takes that step forward. I might just go with Marvin Jones here. Curtis Samuel, I don't want to invest twice into the Washington football team offense. Donovan Peoples-Jones is interesting with Watson, suspension or not, but I love David Bell. I think I got to go with Marvin Jones here if he's available at this pick. I could go, of course, there he goes. So I'm not going to, that really sucks. I think I'm actually going to go down here. That really sucks because Curtis Samuel, I don't want to invest in the wide receiver 3 for Washington's offense. I can't draft Logan Thomas because then I'd have 2 Week 14 bye tight ends. That doesn't help anybody. I've already got my second quarterback. I think I got to go A.J. Green here. At least getting a veteran receiver capable of making plays here and there. Different bye week than the rest of the squad so far. Had a fairly productive season last year. You've got kind of the issue of, Christian Kirk left. So that kind of opens up the door for a guy like Hollywood Brown to come in and do similar things, although I think Hollywood is a better player. D-Hop obviously being gone for the first 6 games helps A.J. Green. But really the risk with Green is age. He is definitely getting up there, progressing in age. He has re-signed with the Cardinals, though that is important news. But then you've got kind of the back and forth between when do they cut Rondale Moore clean to be the true number 3 in this offense. I don't know if he will ever be that player. I think he's very explosive, very talented, but the size is an issue. Can you truly line him up in this offense every snap of a game? If you go 4 or 5 wide, maybe the answer is yes, but is he a true 3-receiver set every single time type of a player that you want there on the field? I truly don't know the answer to that question, which is why I have my hesitancies, but also my optimism with A.J. Green and what he brings to this offense. So all interesting things to consider there. So at this point, we're just drafting for depth. I do need that second tight end. Hayden Hurst got gobbled up from underneath me. I would have loved that, though, because I think that is a valuable pass-catching role, especially with Hayden Hurst being a vertical pressing tight end, a guy who is fairly athletic, a former first-round pick, but just happened to get beat out by Mark Andrews back in the day now. That was a few seasons ago. 2019, I think, is when Andrews broke out. Wouldn't, I guess, at the end of the day, mind drafting Austin Hooper, although it would definitely be overdrafting. Not something I'd feel super great about, but he's got a different bye week. The question becomes, I think I almost have to do this because at that point going forward, I've got a deep enough receiver room. Wan'Dale Robinson's a guy who has nice upside, but I think especially in year one becomes more of a gadget play than anything else. So we'll see what ends up becoming of that situation. That was my 17th round pick. I've got one more selection. I'd much rather have a Sterling Shepard in that Giants offense, despite the fact that the guy has basically chronic hamstring tightness and hamstring pulls and concussions and lots of missed games. I just feel more confident in him as a pure receiver being on the field and used in a respectable volume fashion here. So this draft today, again, seems like it went fast. If you're enjoying today's video, make sure you drop down, leave today's episode with a like, click that subscribe button, go check us out on Twitter at SizzleFantasy. Again, trying to grow that community as well as the overall SFS community. Go check out our social medias in the description of today's episode. And I think we're going to do some community leagues this season. There's a section for that in our Discord server, so if you're interested in that, go join the SFS community Discord. Again, all these links, all these invites are in the description of today's episode. And again, go check out all those other social media platforms. We'd love to have some more engagement on all of those areas. Really great day today on Underdog. Probably feeling the best overall about this particular group of any of the 3 drafts that we've done so far. I've been trying, or not trying necessarily, but I've been doing some early running back drafting strategies here in these first couple of videos. I think I'm going to try switching things up a little bit. Obviously, I want to get a different look at the board every time here. We're getting different draft pick selections, so that's nice and new and whatnot. What I want to try for next episode is going a little bit more wide receiver heavy early, because we haven't really drafted a true number 1 receiver in any of these videos. I haven't gotten my hands on a Cooper Kupp, a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, which is something I was looking to do in today's video. But obviously with Austin Eckler being the guy that fell, that's the direction we ended up going. So that left Jerry Jeudy, who I think has top 12 potential with Russell Wilson catching passes. We'll see. I think he could finish as a high wide receiver too. If his off-the-field issues materialize, that could be a bigger problem, but we'll see about that. Just all stuff to keep our eyes on here as this offseason progresses. There's a few interesting names at the wide receiver position. Okay. Nico Collins goes off the board there. Something just a pondering I had. This is the last pick in the draft for me. What if I draft Tyquan Thornton here, just on the off chance that he happens to have some game where just some corner can't run with him and he's just running past people and just finds himself having a massive game? We'll see. Let's look at the board. I mean, Romeo Doubs is fine. Probably the best option for me to go with would be Sterling Shepard, week 9 bye. If we check that out, we do have a few receivers with the week 9 bye. I really just want upside at this point, so Tyquan Thornton, what's your bye week, buddy? I do already have one Pats receiver. But week 10, we've got Jacoby Myers is our only other week 10 bye. What the heck? Last pick in the draft. I'm looking for some quality upside. Who knows? If Tyquan Thornton finds his way onto the field this season, what are the chances he has one game where he just runs past whoever's guarding him, and just has, 3 catches, 153 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I don't know. I'll take a shot in the dark on that here. Don't care too much because Jacoby Myers is our only other Pats player with a Week 10 bye. I think those are the only 2 Week 10 byes here in the entire roster. So that rounds out today's video. I had a great time. I had super, quality draft today, I think, in my opinion. You guys can let me know. I'm sure someone has a differing opinion with that. So let me know in the comment section if you have any questions. I'm happy to help you guys out with your fantasy leagues. If you want to ask me anything about your dynasty league, your redraft league, draft strategy, any of that, comment section, community Discord server, any of those spaces work great. If you're looking for some draft guide content this offseason, sizzlefantasy.com's got you covered. Just under $5 a month. It's got you covered for everything on the site. Redraft, dynasty. I'll be putting up weekly articles, the occasional exclusive videos, in-depth analysis, all that great stuff, rankings, must-draft players, sleepers, busts. It's a work in progress. It's not a complete product just yet, but all that stuff is actively being worked on, so you're getting up to date as soon as stuff comes out. I'm going to be putting together an email list here and giving you guys updates on what I'm producing on a week-to-week basis. The Discord server is a great area for that as well, and it's going to be a great off season. So keep your eyes open for those other 2 videos coming out today, and of course, if you're watching this later after the fact, go check out some of our playlists on the channel. Support the SFS brand here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Peace out.